traveling with my wife. We're actually halfway across the country from where we normally live, and it was a task to get on. So this morning I started late because I was having a dream that we were already broadcasting, and my wife kicked me in bed and said, "Shouldn't you be online right now?" So that was the first step. Second step was Skype would not work, and third step was getting the stream set up. That Phage guy, the stat man that you've all come to know and love, is standing in today for me on the OBS, doing the broadcast himself. So a big shout out to him for waking up early so we could do this. And I'm calling in remote, so hopefully the sound quality is good, and hopefully you guys enjoy what you get. But we've got some news for you today, and we'll jump right into it so that we don't take too much of your time, as it's already been a bit of a long morning. Starting out with Dota 2 and where we're going with that. It was a very quiet weekend, to be honest, in Dota 2. Not a lot of stuff going on. Kind of the aftermath of ESL is probably the best way to put it. Some great ESL highlights over on Join Dota if you want to see that. Actually, they put up a really great article called ESL You May Have Missed, and it is a compilation of all of the interviews that were done during ESL, which is interesting because you don't get to see a lot of that sort of thing when we talk about esports. It's an interesting esports world because we're used to folks being on webcams or kind of doing their own jam, not being live in front of 30,000 people. So it was interesting across the board, and you can definitely go watch those highlights. What did you think of the ESL format? What did you think of how everything went? Give me your thoughts on ESL, Phage.
I was really impressed, in particular, by the production value of the event. I wasn't expecting to see something that high quality outside of TI. Just the number of people that they had involved with different perspectives on what was going on, and the not the broadcasting desk, but the analysis desk was extremely impressive. They were rotating pros through on a regular basis, so you got both the overarching analyst perspective as well as the more individual perspective that a lot of players provide on specific plays and what's really going through their heads at those moments. And of course, the actual broadcasts were fantastic. In particular, I thought Capitalist did an amazing job, especially considering it was his first major LAN event. I was thoroughly floored by his performance.
Yeah, he did a really good job, and I've really come to enjoy the Cap Merlini pairing, and then the Toby Cinderin pairing. Like, they've really kind of meshed together. But yeah, no, the cap casts were really, really clean. The thing I loved most was the like you said, the analysis desk. With the exception of a couple of folks who rotated in, and once again, these are pros who are used to sitting behind a computer in their underpants, not being on, live streams in front of thousands and thousands. I think it was 110,000 people at one time. That lacked a little bit maybe of some of that personality that you want to see live, but for the most part, the host especially was just phenomenal at directing, motivating conversation. When he ran into something awkward, he moved it somewhere else. It was very, very clean work. And as somebody who works in the industry and has trained pretty heavily in both, theater, film, and improv, I got to say that I was really, really happy with the way that desk ran. So other updates for Dota 2 is the Overflowing Compendium. You guys have probably already heard about that or played with it. Just in case you didn't get a chance to, I will say that I'm on a bit of a potato as I travel, so I haven't been able to do as much, but I played with some of the weather effects. They look very, very good. Most importantly, the two things that I think really, really matter in that update are chat emoticons. And we now no longer have to rely on Twitch. If we want to throw up a kappa or a facepalm, we can use Dota characters to do it, which I think is pretty interesting. Do you think anybody will actually be using emoticons in chat?
I've already seen them used in chat. We had a few 82L games last night, and they were breaking out the emoticons to flame, which was thoroughly amusing, as well as in the guild chat there. On the side, as soon as it was released, everyone downloaded the update and came in, and suddenly there were chickens all over the chat feed. I didn't know what had happened. But I'm looking forward to seeing them more, and honestly, I'm hoping that they'll temper some of the flame that you see coming out sometimes during particularly frustrating pubs.
Yeah. The emoticons worry me a little bit. Now, the thing that doesn't worry me at all that I'm incredibly excited about, and I'm actually viscerally angry that I'm on vacation right now and can't start playing with, is the new live rewind feature. So for those of you who don't know, or maybe just skimmed over that because it will never really matter to you, as I don't think it'll matter to most people, the fact Blizzard basically added in the feature, the ability that during a live cast, a spectator can rewind the camera while it is in action and look at replays. So what that means is that your casters, in addition to the new zoom button that they added, have the ability to do highlights right after fights as well, which is pretty crazy to me. And now this is something where I think if you go back and I don't know, if you watch ESL, for instance, the one beef that I had was that the zoom was almost never used by any of the casters in that tournament. I don't know if you noticed that or not.
Yeah, and I think some of that is just that they didn't have a whole lot of time to play around with it beforehand, and it was such a high-profile event. The last thing you want to do is dive into something that's not your comfort zone and try out something new and screw it up in the middle of a big fight or something like that.
Right. And I think the other big problem that they're running into is the slow drag is the most popular way to move the camera smoothly. The problem is you can only attach the one button smooth drag to your middle mouse. And in order to use the zoom, you've got to pan with your middle mouse. So if you're following a team fight and things go a little bit crazy, you have to essentially release your camera pan in order to zoom. And that's just not a functional control option for people who use the smooth drag. Now, fortunately, I built my own system of control, so the zooming is very easy because I use a joystick basically to move the camera smoothly. But I think a lot of casters are having some trouble with that transition away from smooth drag to embrace the zoom. So that said, though, live replays, I mean, think about the possibilities. You see a massive team fight down at the Roche pit. Things go crazy. You see a total team wipe. The other team just walks in and starts roaching. So you know that you have 15 to 25 seconds of just watching Roche and talking about what just happened. Why not hit the back button and watch the fight again in slow motion? And I think that's going to be pretty amazing for the viewers. I also think it's got the potential to really cause a lot of trouble if you jump back live and you miss out on something that's actually happening in the game. So a little bit of each. It's going to be fun to play with. I look forward to it. I think that the casters who master these two new features are going to be the casters who show up at TI5.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think in particular, these two new features, the zooming camera and the instant replay, are going to add a whole new level of skill requirements to upper-level broadcasting as a primary caster. I mean, you look at the average caster who is at the top right now, and there isn't a whole other difference in terms of camera control. But I think, in particular, when these are still new features, the people that can master them first are really going to come out on top as the premier cameramen, as it were.
Absolutely. So hence my frustration that I've got another 6 days without any good computer connections to test it. But that said, I think it's going to be a great feature. It'll be a lot of fun to watch. Keep an eye on that, guys. I did tweet out the second I heard about it that I think this is going to usher in the age of the dedicated cameraman. As somebody who's worked in film for a long time, they've basically added every feature that a cameraman in live sports would be using anyway. Pan, zooms, replays, cutscene. I mean, basically pretty much everything. So they'll literally be able to have a primary caster who's casting and can say things like go to replay, and the cameraman can just hit the button to go ahead and provide that to him. So it's going to be a really interesting dynamic, but it's going to take a while to get there because until all of the casters, including play-by-play and color, are familiar with the live replay, they won't be able to call for it. And if a dedicated cameraman goes ahead and throws it up without telling anyone, then it's just going to cause a lot of confusion. So it's going to be very interesting, and I'll be following the progress and keeping an eye on streams to see who starts to utilize it when, so that we know who's taking that front step in the competition of camera mastery. So that is the live update. That's the interesting things that have come out there. Upcoming Dota stuff you need to know about is registration for tournaments. So we're in the TI4 lull, right? Like the lull before the storm. The only tournament that I know of right now that is actually registering is the new CEVO season. For the CEVO Open is registering through the end of the week. So make sure that you guys, if you have a team or know someone who's planning on playing in that, they get registered before the TI gets rolling. And then second, there's a Tactic Hive tournament going on in the semi-pro amateur scene right now. Other than that, though, it is deathly quiet. And obviously the 82Ls Legends series is also running on, pretty much every night. I know it's officially Thursday nights, but it seems like every night that I log on, 82L's got something going on.
Yeah, so
So
Legends
I
is primarily Tuesday and Wednesday, and that's the really upper level play. That's where you've got teams like Vasavi and Xeno duking it out. But
mm,
the champion and entry level matches are happening on Wednesday and Thursday, primarily on Thursday. Although not this week since we've got so many players from the U.S. We also, for those of you who don't know, I work pretty heavily with AD2L, and so I'm when I say we, I'm referring to AD2L. There's the weekend tournament series. There's both an EU and an NA division. So that happens every Saturday, and anyone can sign up for it. And so that's happening pretty much every week. Great way to practice. And if you like 1v1, there's a tournament, once again, EU and NA on Wednesdays. And all that stuff, just go to amateurdota2league.com, and you can find the registration stuff there.
perfect. So there you heard it. And while we're on the topic of who Phage Guy works for, I do want to send a congratulations out here publicly. He tweeted it already, but just so that everybody knows, Phage has officially been hired or signed with Higher Ground TV to work, believe, as written stats initially, and then move into cast stats. So that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I'm.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited. I've worked with a few of the guys doing in-game stats on occasion, and a few of them got a hold of my stats guide that I had written primarily for AD2L, as well as a few other comments that I'd made. A number of them are really close with Nahaz, so I think I may have gotten a recommendation from that angle, but don't quote me on that. I don't know for sure exactly where it came from. And yeah, I'm really excited to be working with them over there. Looking forward to helping them put a few more numbers to what they're saying, and it should be a good time.
Yeah, it's a small Dota community, so it's amazing how knowing how word gets around when you do good work. So we know you do good work. We've seen it at the AD2L. We found you, and the second we did, I think we started using you as much as we possibly could. So I'm jealous that you got signed, only because it means that I won't be able to steal you as often, because you'll have real legit paying jobs that you have to be at. So congratulations to Phage. I look forward to seeing him continue, and I think that's just one step closer to our Phage guy being at TI5, which is part of the commitment. So we're excited about that. Any other Dota news that you wanted to bring up while we're live on the Dota topic, Phage?
Well, I know in a few weeks the Vicaria Invitational is going to be happening. I think they're already in the group stages for that, actually. And the big thing for me there is I'm helping them out with the finals, and we're expecting to see Four Friends and Krilly and Team Coast there. So some good Tier 2, borderline Tier 1 play coming out in Europe over the next couple of weeks. Keep an eye out for that. And I know the guys over at Vicara do a really good job. So yeah, keep an eye on that. Should be some really good broadcasts, some really good games. I would also like to say a particular shout out to the Flower Boys. You may know them as AFDP. They were playing in Legends last night, and they made the Tusk Meepo strategy happen. And it was beautiful. It was absolutely gorgeous to watch. Of course, it was a Bidman Meepo, Buko Tusk, and the start of the game was a bit rough because their supports were Tusk and Centaur. But once they got rolling, they snowballed, as it were, and it was nice. It was a thing of beauty. So keep an eye out.
Awesome.
I think
so that's.
Yeah, the game's going to be cut on the AD2L Twitch stream later on today, I imagine, and you might want to check it out. It's pretty fantastic.
Awesome. So if you want to see that, that's over on twitch.tv/amateur Dota 2 League. The 2 is in number, not in letter. So that is our Dota 2 news. In gaming updates right now, not a ton, but what I did find some pretty interesting stuff is some of you guys might play League of Legends. I won't hold it against you, but if you insist on playing the game, you'll be interested to know that the public chat rooms are being shut down by Riot. So the world of MOBA has always been famous for its flame fests, and no place more so than the public chat rooms of League of Legends where people hang out between games. And Riot has decided that it was more of a problem than a benefit, and they will be shutting it down, from what I understand, later this month. So that a pretty interesting detail in the world of League of Legends. I've also heard, and I can't verify this, I can't find the article right now, that League of Legends is also planning a graphical overhaul in the next year to try and match themselves up in a lot of ways with the look of Dota 2. So it should be pretty interesting to see them looking to compete on a more upper end competitive scale, if that makes sense, as we move forward. It's amazing what $10 million in prize money can prompt.
Yeah, for sure.
And
It's
let's
all
see
about
what
the
else.
money.
So a other news is somebody on Minecraft spent decided he wanted to travel the entire distance of the Minecraft map. For anybody who plays that game, the equivalent is about 30,000 kilometers, and it took him 17 solid days to do it of never stopping moving. So I don't know why anybody would do this to themselves, but he did it, he made it, and that's pretty crazy. I didn't
Yeah,
realize Minecraft was that massive of a game.
it absolutely is. And I'm not.
That's crazy.
I've never played it myself. I've seen a few people
Uh-huh.
play, and I've been tempted to, but I know if I start, I'm just going to get sucked in. Um, and it's my understanding he did it in a mine cart. And so I guess there's
Yeah.
some specific server or mod where he just loaded himself up into this cart and pressed go, and it
Mm.
was just like this scenic panoramic view with a mine cart in the middle the entire way.
Jeez. That's crazy. So quite quite a trip. Interesting little fact on that game. And honestly, that's about all that I have in like video game updates. It's been kind of a quiet weekend for the most part. Now, other things that were not all that quiet is news. The actual news, real life happened, and some pretty crazy stuff went down. First and foremost, we have to talk about the World Cup. U.S. We've talked about the entire time. The U.S. team leaves the World Cup yesterday when they are defeated by Belgium 2-1 in extra time. Did you have a chance to watch that game, Fidge?
I did. I got to catch part of it yesterday, and it was, oh my gosh, Tim Howard, OP, please nerf.
Tim Howard OP. I think my favorite tweets to date were Tim Howard has had shallow grave on him for the last 40 minutes. Somebody else tweeted that they should report the rest of the U.S. team for feeding. What was it? I saw another tweet that said, I just tried to follow Tim Howard on Twitter and got blocked, which I thought was pretty hilarious. And then my wife just walked in and told me that the Wikipedia entry for the Department of Defense was edited covertly yesterday to include Tim Howard as the director.
I believe he was
So
actually listed as the Secretary of Defense.
Oh, the Secretary of Defense. So he was listed as the Secretary of Defense for the Department of Defense on Wikipedia, which I thought was pretty hilarious. And you got to love how much America has really finally embraced that he is one of the best goalkeepers in the world. And something that I've known for years. He actually, I brought a little tidbit for you guys. He plays for the Everton football team, which is their nickname is the Toffees. No coincidence there. Tim Howard is the reason that I have the name Toffees. So he did a phenomenal job, and I was really proud to see that. For those of you who didn't know why I was named what I am, I've been following Tim Howard since I was in junior when I used to play soccer, and love the football team that he plays for. So that is pretty impressive. It was a great game. It's going to do wonders for sports. Interesting story was that the World Cup, CNN published a report that said the World Cup has shattered streaming records. Over 30 million viewing hours of the ESPN live stream have already been logged in the 2014 World Cup. So that's an insane amount of watching.
Yeah, that's
And we're pretty excited.
it's mind blowing the number of people who have tuned in. And it's always the question with the World Cup in the U.S. How many people are actually football fans, and how many people are just tuning in because they heard it's something exciting and that they should tune in because it'll make them cool. Because
And
you don't hear much about the U.S. men's team when the World Cup isn't happening or they aren't playing well in the Olympics. It's not something people are particularly interested in. And the one thing that irked me a little bit is all these people are like, oh man, the men's team, they're out. I really wish they'd gone all the way. Why don't you people follow the women's team? Like, they're the best in the world right now.
They are. Absolutely. So if you guys don't, I think their World Cup is next year, so it'll be fun to see who shows up to watch that one. But I think this is good because last time the U.S. made it to the round of 16. Interest in the U.S. soccer skyrocketed. And I don't know if you realized, but MLS didn't even really get up and running until after the 2002 World Cup. And after the last one, they had such an expansion. They've been able to add teams every single year. So I think that the success combined with the fact that like David Beckham is building a stadium in Miami are going to really add a lot of light to U.S. soccer and help us take the next step. So great game, guys. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, I'm sure you can watch a replay somewhere. Well worth it. If you want to, you can probably just fast forward to the second half and watch from there to see the frustration and the chaos that ensues. And the overtime was probably some of the best overtime that I have seen. It was a 30-minute lightning fast 30. So check it out. It was definitely something to take a look at.
So,
What else?
quick before
Yeah,
we
go
move
ahead.
on, what position did you play back when you were playing soccer?
I was a goalkeeper.
Oh, really? So you can really
Yeah.
relate to Tim Howard.
Oh, absolutely. Like watching him there, like yelling at his teams, trying to get them fired up. Like you could see between blocks, I don't know if you noticed, he would bounce back up and he started clapping his hands and running towards players on the field. And I know for a fact that what he was doing is he was saying, guys, I got that one. Next time around, I need you to do this. Trying to keep his team active, keeping that defensive line solid. And it just got to the point towards the end of the game where you could see their legs failing and they just didn't have the ability to get back there and help him. And honestly, when you see those shots that he stopped, for those of you who may not be soccer fans, the thing they teach you on day one of learning to be a goalkeeper or a striker is it is the striker's responsibility to get the ball in the goal. If the goalkeeper misses a block, it's not his fault because he's got the significantly harder job. The goalkeeper's job is to cut angles and do his best to get in the way. And when the defense fails, try to stop the ball. And the fact that he stopped so many, I think he actually set a world record for World Cups with the amount of blocks he had, is just mind-boggling. That it was literally for any goalkeeper in the world who was watching that, they were going, holy crap, this Tim Howard.
Yeah, I don't know.
So,
one other thing about tweets there, the Belgian team captain, the first thing he sent
Mhm.
out afterwards was, oh my gosh, Tim Howard, MVP of the match. Like the guy who won
Yep.
wasn't like, woo, we won. It was, oh my gosh, that goalkeeper.
Absolutely. And also an interesting fact for you guys to keep in mind, Kevin Morales and Kevin Morales right now plays as the lead striker for the Evertonian team, which Howard is the defender for or the goalkeeper for. And Fellaini, the basically the delivery guy, also played for Everton up until about 8 months ago. So 2 of the strikers on the Belgium team play every single day against Tim Howard at practice. So Tim had an additional challenge because they know where his weaknesses are. So he had an additional, really, I think, tough time because every time Morales would come in, he basically had to say, well, he knows that I'm bad going to my lower left. Is he going to go there or is he going to go somewhere else because he knows that I know he's going to go there? And that alone, I was watching the game going, I don't know how he's dealing with that stress. And then on top of that, just the way that he played was so good. So interesting tidbits that you guys only get because I am also a soccer fan. And let's move to other news. Do you guys ever watch the TV show Community?
I've seen
Or have
it.
you ever seen that show, Phage?
Yeah, I used to follow it
So-
a bit more in the first seasons. Not so much now, but I know there's some exciting news there.
Yep, it was popular. It was canceled. It came back. It got canceled. Came back. It got canceled. And it was just picked back up. Yahoo signed a deal with Community to actually produce the show itself. So Yahoo actually does produce quite a few. I'm sorry, Sony's producing it for Yahoo is what I should say. And Sony Television Studio, which a lot of folks haven't heard about, doesn't do a lot of stuff or didn't. They're the guys who produce Jeopardy. They produce Days of Our Lives. They do a lot of TV shows, including things for like the Crackle website. So they actually bought the rights to Community and were producing exclusively for Yahoo. Whether that means that we can watch it on the browser or it means that Yahoo's launching some sort of new service, I don't know. But it is exciting to see that the show's brought back as it is one that a lot of folks, especially I think in our genre and our age group, really, really enjoy. So kudos to them on making it back. And the last stuff we're going to go over is the quick update on the things that I think you need to know for your day. And we'll try to get this wrapped up in the next 15 minutes or so. First and foremost, football, we already talked about it, but just know that if you don't know the name Tim Howard and you walk into work, people are going to mock you. So Tim Howard is the king of America right now. Social media was exploding for him on all parts of the country, all parts of the world. And if he wasn't a legend prior, he definitely is now. And he's going to be one of those names. Like when you walked out of the Women's World Cup, you took Brandi Chastain and Mia Hamm with you. This last World Cup for men, you took Landon Donovan as the ultimate hero, a name that became household here in America. Tim Howard is that new name. And make sure that you know it so that you don't get made fun of as unpatriotic. Second, Hobby Lobby. So it's not So here's the story. The U.S. Supreme Court, for those of you who aren't from the U.S., is still an interesting story, so stay with me on this one. But the U.S. Supreme Court heard a case brought by Hobby Lobby regarding the new Obamacare health plan and the providers having to provide it. Now, its stipulation in the healthcare plan is that U.S. job or employers have to provide health contraceptives or birth control as part of health standards. Hobby Lobby filed a lawsuit with the Supreme Court saying, well, we are an organization that doesn't believe in birth control on a religious basis. Therefore, we don't think we should be forced to provide it. Now, it's not that they were saying we don't believe in birth control in the sense of like the pill for hormonal balances. They're saying that we believe that birth control is a form of early term abortion. We don't want to be delivering the morning after pill. And so that was what went to Supreme Court. And right now there's a misconception that this is a exclusively Hobby Lobby decision and that Hobby Lobby doesn't want people to use condoms or doesn't want them to have any form of contraceptive. That's essentially untrue. Hobby Lobby just happened to be the name on the lawsuit. But what they did decide in a 4-5 vote, and this is massive, is that companies can declare that they will not provide birth control on religious grounds. Now, the reason this is massive is not because of the fact that they can't provide birth control, but because it opens up the door for any company to say religiously on any topic that they do not want to provide something to a employee that was guaranteed by law. Does that make sense? So that's why the brouhaha is going on. It's partially about women's rights, but it's, I think, in a bigger sense, more about the idea that your company can say, hey, religiously, we believe that you should be hardworking and spend 9 hours in the office, and we're going to change the workday.
Yeah, and even beyond that,
ahead.
it opens up the door for other types of discrimination. The argument for providing service on the basis of race or sexual orientation because they're of the religious beliefs, essentially of the owner of the company.
Exactly. So it's an interesting argument. I can see where both sides get fired up about the birth control thing. But what I really want you guys to do is think about stepping back from the birth control argument and think about it in the context that Phage just produced. If your company believes, or the owner of the company believes religiously, and there are religions that believe all kinds of interesting things, such as the woman's place is in the home and not at work, does that mean that he doesn't have to hire women for jobs? And that's something that could very genuinely come up over the next couple of years based on this Supreme Court decision. There was a scathing 35-page response written by, what's her name? It slipped my mind just now.
Ginsburg.
Ginsburg just wrote a 35-page response, which I haven't had a chance to read for obvious reasons because it's 35 pages. But I'm going to try to get the highlights together for you guys if I can, but basically against the decision. And I find that pretty interesting. So it's not often that the Supreme Court justices will write diatribes at the end of a vote, but this one was big enough that she felt it was necessary. So that's something to keep in mind, and I'm sure that'll come up around the water cooler. And if it does, you're going to look like the smartest person in the world when you bring up things besides birth control in that conversation.
There is one of the things that should be mentioned in terms of the birth control. So medically, birth control isn't just prescribed as birth control. In particular, some of you know I get really bad nosebleeds on occasion. It's because I have a bleeding disorder called von Willebrand's type 1. And it causes additional bleeding, particularly when there's mucosal bleeding involved. And so for women who have this disease, birth control as a form of hormonal treatment to help control bleeding is one of the primary forms of treatment. And the goal is not to prevent them from getting pregnant. The goal is to hormonally control bleeding issues. And this decision allows that treatment to be denied. Same thing goes for use of hormonal treatments in control of acne, which is a really big problem, especially for people with image issues, teenagers and such, where this is a major form of treatment that's really effective. And the goal is not to prevent them from getting pregnant. The goal is medical. It's to treat something else that's unrelated, and this just happens to be the side effect of the treatment. And so that's something that could also be denied.
We are now getting dangerously close to opinionated conversation, so we want to avoid that. But I do want to bring this up as Jordan from the 82L, who we talked about a little bit earlier, did remind us to remember this decision only applies to closely held corporations. So if it's publicly traded, it may not be able to follow the same system or rules, but it is something very, very serious to keep in mind as you guys go to the water cooler. So let's move to something a little less crazy. This is something that is a heads up for you guys. The Federal Trade Commission is suing T-Mobile. It says that the cell phone carrier has made hundreds of millions, I'm going to repeat that phrase, hundreds of millions of dollars in bogus charges that were allegedly concealed on customers' monthly bills. The CEO says this is sensationalized and unfounded without merit. That's a direct quote, and suggests the government go collect the money for the nefarious text subscription services. So basically, he's talking back against the government, but the FTC is saying it. So basically, if you are a T-Mobile customer, go get some of those old bills and see if any of those charges that are there don't look like they should be, because that's a lot of money for a major company who has been on some difficult financial times. And you may have gotten the brunt of that if you're a T-Mobile customer. So I don't know if you heard about that or not. It's pretty crazy to me that a company that big would be putting in behind-the-scene charges, but it's important to be aware of.
Yeah, for sure. I've never used T-Mobile myself, but I know a few other people who have and who got hit by those charges and had no idea what to do about it. And we're just like, "What? I'm freaking out because my telephone bill is half again as much as I was planning on paying this month," which, particularly if you're a grad student, your budget tends to be a little bit on the tight side of things. So it was not a trivial problem for a lot of people.
So if that was an issue for you, now's the time to tweet out or email the FTC and let them know that it did happen to you. So moving right along, we've got a little bit of world news for you guys. Big issue going on in Israel right now. Israeli police basically found a body in a wooded area of Jerusalem where they believe that 3 young men who had disappeared were murdered by Hamas, which is a militant Palestinian organization. That said, they're just blaming it. Hamas said we had nothing to do with it. And as I can't find the story right now. Last night, as I was falling asleep watching the news, there was mention of the fact that Israel had already mobilized some military craft and potentially some bombers to fly over the Hamas area. Whether or not they dropped anything is yet to be determined. So keep in mind that highly inflammatory area of our world is even more of a tinderbox, which is crazy considering just down the river there's even more going on in other parts of the world. So if we were enjoying a nice respite from the Israeli-Palestinian back and forth until this happened. So we're going to keep an eye on that over the next couple of days.
The other thing to mention in that area of the world is ISIS in Iraq announcing that they've formed this caliphate, which is kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it's incredibly terrifying. So that is number 5, is looking at Iraq. We've talked about ISIS a few times for you guys. That is the best funded terrorist organization in the world, and they are forming their own government basically in Iraq right now. And it is terrifying because if they literally take over the country, if they form a government, it would be the first government, maybe with the exception of North Korea, I think even in exception, that would comfortably and openly say that they will use terrorism as a form of diplomacy. And that is mind-bogglingly scary.
And specifically that they would use terrorism as a form of diplomacy against the West. These are not people they're not fans of Western philosophy. And so this would be a state being formed in direct opposition, not only to the U.S., but also to all of the Western community as a whole.
Absolutely. So it is something we're going to keep an eye on. Everyone should keep an eye on. And it's one of those things where I don't support us going back to war, but it might be something where we do have to put some troops on the ground. Because while we know North Korea likes to saber rattle and make threats, they never actually are able to follow through on them based on the fact that they have zero money and zero power. We're looking at a group in ISIS that is connected to major terrorist networks, is a branch off of Al-Qaeda, and more importantly has millions, and we're talking $400+ million as a startup fund to get themselves rolling in this endeavor, and more than enough in terms of resources to do things like mobilize terrorist campaigns and provide sanctuary for those who are running away after having executed those plots. So it is a pretty big deal, something to keep in mind. Uh, sorry that we ended on the down notes. I should probably do the news first and then go to Dota 2. But that said, it was a pretty crazy week in terms of world politics. I do want to make sure you guys know that as we get crazy and excited about the performance of Tim Howard in the U.S. and all of the TI stuff going on in the next couple of weeks, it is important to know that the rest of the world does not stop functioning. And now you're going to look all the wiser for it. But that's all that I have for you guys today. Do you have any closing thoughts for them, Phage?
Nothing in particular. Good luck. Have fun.
Good luck, have fun, right? That is take it to your life, GLHF, and do not, under any circumstances, forget to buy a TP scroll before you leave the house today. But as always, it was great spending the morning with you guys. We'll have this uploaded to YouTube as quickly as we possibly can. And I'm still working on figuring out how to do a podcast. So if anybody wants to become my tech director and help me set up a podcast so that we can go straight to podcast with the morning show, we are more than happy to have you. I have zero money, so you won't get paid anything, but you'll have the pleasure of knowing that you're helping put us on the air. And a big shout out again to Phage Guy for helping me out, waking up early before work so that he could run the OBS to broadcast the show today, as I am calling in remotely. So if there's any quality issues, I apologize for that. It's on Phage. That said, though, that's it. That's all we got. And I guess have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching, guys.